All right, welcome to part 2 of our interview with Pratik Naik. We are here and we're discussing kind of just how you got into the area of retouch and photography. We discussed that in the last video. If you guys missed that, be sure to check that out. In this video, I really want to get into kind of that transition into professional world of retouch and all that. And number one, was it, when you were making that transition, we talked about how that was 2-3 years after college. Was it what you expected? What were the realities basically compared to what you expected in the industry?
Well, my expectations, knowing the business side, was it was going to be a difficult process because no one knew who I was. And I had to make a name for myself. I didn't know how much effort that would have taken me, more than I already anticipated. Now, I mention this because if you don't have a business background or marketing background in a sense where you've worked in a field where it takes that kind of a dedication to a craft, you won't know it till you jump in.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of photographers, that also will quit after a while because it's so hard to do it as a one person business. So I think the hardest part for me was trying to get clients, marketing myself. I had no idea what that entailed. I didn't know what trying to get sales was. I underestimated everything that had to do from even like accounting and taxes and everything. So I had to basically learn more than I ever anticipated initially. And so I think that coupled with the amount of time that it took was my biggest underestimated factor.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that because it's a very common thing when you start in something like photography, when you look at a photography business, nobody wants to think about the taxes or the administrative side or dealing with clients or any of that stuff. You just want to think, oh, look, he's got nice pictures. He creates beautiful art.
Yeah.
But that becomes such a small part of your daily life. And I'll go weeks without taking a single photo sometimes. And I'm like, yes, I am a photographer, but I haven't taken a photo in a long, long time. But that's really great. And I want to know specifically, what is it that you did to get your very first paid job?
My first paid job, boy, that was something special. It's one of those things when you first start out and you first get a job, you kind of remember it and you think, wow, this is something, somebody believes in me so much that they're paying me to do this. And my first paid job came through actually Model Mayhem. A lot of people start on Model Mayhem sometimes because it's open resource, like, especially because now with the internet these days. And the good thing is, essentially all you do is have a portfolio and you have this whole network to connect to. So I basically started with 4 pictures that I found on Model Mayhem and I put together a portfolio. And then I started...
And this was retouching portfolio?
Yeah, this is my retouching portfolio. And so the way that I got there was I basically went around asking photographers, where they came from. And if I saw in the forums that they were looking for a retoucher, I'd kind of raise my hand like, I'm here, I'd be interested in getting, trade stuff going for you. So I got my initial portfolio together. And then I basically just started marketing myself and staying socially active through the forums. And so people would, start inquiring. And the way I marketed myself was kind of the mentality of a photographer, that I was a photographer and I still shoot. So I understand where you're coming from. So I kind of know what the realistic boundaries are for your work. And I know a lot of people go over that. And I want to, maintain the integrity of what you're shooting and what your values are for the post side. And so they saw that and they gave me a chance. And those clients that gave me a chance are still my clients today. So I've held on to them and our relationships have always been steady. So initially it was from Model Mayhem, and that was my first paying job, was doing a lot of portraiture.
And so you were going out to other photographers on Model Mayhem. You were asking them, could I use your image and show as retouching examples, or did you have in that portfolio that you were saying you started out with, were those your own images or were they others that you basically asked for permission and said, I'll retouch them for you if you let me put these in my portfolio as retouching examples?
There was actually a forum on there that basically gives out samples for you to retouch and kind of lets photographers, give people a chance to put that in their portfolio.
Interesting.
And so you basically retouch them and you get permission, so to speak, is everything okay? And if it's okay, may I please use it in my portfolio? And if they like the work, they use it and then I use it as well. So I got that initial start just like that.
Yeah. I would think from the business side, one frustrating thing about being in retouch is that you really don't own the images, right? I mean, you could put, when I see something like that's in Vogue, I almost feel like oftentimes the retoucher is the true artist in that image. Yet they're never credited. They're never like really discussed
Right.
after that point. Is that frustrating?
There's a good trend that's happening recently where I've noticed, especially for myself, a lot of photographers will credit me now, especially because they also have that same mindset now that everyone's part of a team. And another reason why that never happens is because when you see editorials like Vogue and Elle for United States, you get to a point where these big labels are sending their work out to retouching houses, so a group of people are retouching them. So it's very hard to do a whole credit list of a retouching the team, so to speak. So that's one of the reasons why it doesn't happen. But now it's still changing, especially because a lot more freelancers are coming into the industry, and so you'll see individual credits in magazines. Like the ones I work for a lot of times will credit me now, which is fantastic because you can go to the bookstore or magazine place and just pick up and see your credit with the rest of the whole team together.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I definitely see that turnaround happening a lot more. I don't know if it'll stay that way or it'll keep continuing, but so far it's been really great.
Yeah, I hope so, because I just remember seeing some of like Annie Leibovitz's shots, and I'd see the behind the scenes, and you see the shot in camera. I particularly remember remember the one with Queen Latifah as she's playing the Little Mermaid. So you see the image, and then you see the final, and then all I saw was photo by Annie Leibovitz, and I'm like, dude,
no one else.
There was so much in between there that
right.
So that's great. I hope that never gets lost in translation again.
Yeah.
Once you got that first job, you said you got your first job through Modeling Mayhem. What was the process of going to getting into these bigger, magazine stuff? Was it mainly who you're aligning yourself with? Because it's also the photographer that wants to get in these magazines too.
That's right.
How did you approach that?
It happened, when I first started my first few jobs, basically the way I marketed myself from there was primarily word of mouth, where I really believe that if you do a good job with somebody, word of mouth is the best referral you can get, even more than paid advertisements or anything of that nature. So from there, people started talking in the local communities about, hey, because photographers always talk about stuff, gear related, post related, everything. And they always ask, oh, who retouched your photo? I saw that photo you posted. Did you retouch that? Because it looks a little bit different than what I noticed.
Yeah.
And so they'll always, give referrals out. And so little by little, the network kept expanding. And I didn't anticipate it at the time because I was just tampering with the industry, seeing how it kind of was. And it started growing so fast. And eventually contacts got bigger and bigger. So it was small steps by small steps.
I see.
So it'd be one referral was bigger than the next. And the next one was either somebody looking at his work that they weren't friends that wanted to contact me because they'd credit me. And so you'd start getting inquiries from different people that you never heard of. And they all had better and better portfolios. So from that point, those photographers started submitting to bigger magazines. So by default, I went in with a ship and went and got credit a little bit more and more.
And just so people understand, I feel like a lot of people don't understand the amount of time it takes to go through this process. I mean, how many years did that span where you basically got that first job to building up until you're getting major, publications?
It was, I was very fortunate where I played my cards right and had a little bit of luck playing into place. So, going from there to there, maybe 3 or 4 years or so, really pushing it to a point where I was comfortable and in magazines that I really wanted to be in. So it took a long time to establish. And I think like any other business, the first 2 years, you kind of have to see it as a struggle. You have to write it off.
Yeah.
You have to have enough money saved up to, that this is not going to happen the first years. Just have enough saved up. And then from there, you can really, maintain your progress and see where it goes from there.
Well, it's interesting too that you say that, you played your cards right and it took 3-4 years because I think a lot of people come in the industry, they think that they want everything now, right? I mean, that's just our mindset in general. It's not just this industry, it's just in life in general. Do you remember, 10 years ago, who owned a cell phone 10 years ago?
Oh.
You called your friends. If they're home, they're home. If they're not, they're not.
Exactly.
That was fine, right?
Yeah.
Now when I call my friend, I get pissed off when they don't answer in 3 calls. I'm like, dude, where have you been?
You have a phone. You should be calling. You gotta call back right away.
And it's like, what? Nobody got upset at each other 10 years ago when we couldn't reach somebody. But anyway, we want things now, and it's important to remember that playing your cards right, it took 3 to 4 years of hard work.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a very realistic expectation that everybody needs to have. Moving on, I wanted to talk about now where you're at basically currently in your business. Solstice Retouch, and I don't know if you did this intentionally, by the way, but a lot of people will name their businesses after themselves.
Right.
Do you have people working for you? Because I would assume that you would name it Solstice. By the way, it's a really cool name,
Oh,
too.
thank you.
Whoever came up with that, it's an awesome name. But it kind of allows you to grow the business without attaching to yourself, right?
Exactly.
Is that what you were thinking when you...
Yeah, and as you said, thinking about the long term, I never thought about the short term. And people are always like, "Why didn't you just name it after yourself? It sounds kind of stupid to not do that."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, listen, I could name it after myself, or I could think in the future where by then people would already know about it, and boom, I could just open up a business, and people are like, oh, you're a legitimate full scale operation now."
Mm-hmm.
So I'm at that point now where I have enough business to have people working with me.
Awesome.
And so what I'll do is, say, for example, I have a load that I can't handle. So I'll offshoot it to a couple people that work with me, and we'll tackle the project together and still maintain those fast turnaround times with good prices. And that way people can get everything they essentially want. As like they said, now. People want it now.
Yeah.
People want it as affordable as possible. So I kept that in mind to upscale it, just like you mentioned. And it allows me the possibility to do so.
Yeah, it's a great approach, and especially when you have a cool name. So you have, with Solstice Retouch, you do retouching, but are you also working on kind of getting paid jobs as a photographer, or is your photography now more of your passion? What are you doing with photography exactly?
Initially, I wanted photography to be my profession, but I realized that I think retouching was my actual, what I wanted to, my passion, my drive. And so now I shoot for the pleasure of it, like a lot of photographers start out with. So I shoot for fun, to keep on keeping my skills honed in. I do intend to start shooting again as well eventually, with retouching on the side. But
paid shooting, like for clients, okay.
Yeah, especially because now I have more connection in the fashion industry and so forth. It's much easier to get my foot in the door. But yeah, it's definitely been just a hobby for now.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah.
I miss photography as kind of a hobby and passion, because oftentimes I just don't even have my camera with me. I don't want it with me. I'm just
right.
I've seen
when
enough.
You're not working, you just don't want to just forget it. Family's like, where are my pictures? Why don't we take pictures together?
So on the business side of things, I want to talk about kind of dealing with clients. You're in a very kind of special position in retouch, in that you're essentially tasked with taking something that is, that could be either good or it could be bad,
right,
and making it better, or making it great.
Right.
How is it working with photographers now? Because I know photographers have egos with them, and how is it in communicating with them this vision and what you'd recommend for an image? How you'd go about doing it. And let's go there. I have another question to add on. Sure. I don't want to add on too many. So, what is it like working with these photographers in the communication standpoint?
I think I'm very blessed in the sense where I know how it is working with clients from a photography standpoint.
Yeah.
It is much harder working with brides or art directors or what have you. It is much harder. Working with photographers, they have a clear vision of what they want because they can see it in their mind. They have the experience. So all I need is a way to get it out of them. Like I have a friend, he's a makeup artist. His name is Jason, and he told me something that was very interesting. He said that whenever a woman comes in the store and looks for a shade of makeup, and she goes, "What do you recommend?" He goes, "What do you recommend?" She goes, "I don't know what I want. And you tell me."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, do you like blues or pinks?" Like, "Oh, I hate pinks." So that means you like blues then, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a process where there's a way to get things out of the photographer to help guide them to communicate vision. So it's been really great. I enjoy it a lot, especially because I get to talk to like-minded artists. And the process has become very steady now. Like I can go from quoting a job to executing to any edits very seamlessly, especially that I have the experience. So it's been great.
When you were first doing it, did you find that there would be, as you're learning how to communicate and how to quote and how to do all this, did you find that there'd be miscommunications where you get an image, you do something with it, provide it back to them, and then it's not? Yes.
Initially, they would be like, "Oh yeah, go retouch the photo."
Yeah.
And that was a license for me to be as artistic as I wanted. I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna go retouch how I wanted." And then they got it back to like, "You know what? I like the skin work and everything. It's great, but your art direction. That wasn't what I was thinking." And then I realized, you know what, I think I really need to figure out a way to get out of them, because, you know, if you went to Picasso or Van Gogh and asked them, paint me a picture,
Yeah.
you're not going to get the same thing.
Yeah.
And you're either going to like one or the other. You're not going to like both styles.
No, for sure.
So it doesn't matter how good somebody is. But if you have that communication aspect that's lost, you're going to fail. So I had to develop a way to kind of get it out of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd kind of guide them and say, you know what, show me kind of what you like. What color grading do you like?
Mm-hmm.
What style of skin work do you like? And
for us, we put together a mood board. Is that what you're doing with them essentially?
Exactly.
Is putting in a mood board?
Yeah, it's a post mood board in a
Uh-huh.
sense. It's a mood board for their soul in a way, if you could say it that way. And they'd
Good name for a book, by the way.
Yeah, mood board for your
Write
soul.
that down for later.
Chicken soup for your soul for photographers.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, they after I was able to get out of them, it became much more seamless, and they were much more open to it as well. And the other key point I realized was I had to study their work.
Uh-huh.
You know, a lot of retouchers are very stylized; they have their own unique style.
Sure.
But that doesn't work in a commercial atmosphere where you're working for art directors and agencies and editors and all the stuff where they want it their way. They don't care how stylized you are; they want it their way. So it was very important for me to understand that and know that I should be like a chameleon to adapt to any photographer and their individual unique styles.
That leads me to another question, which is, have you ever had to turn down a client or a project because maybe you don't agree with the final art direction, or maybe it just doesn't fit with what you do?
Yeah, oh yeah. Like actually just happened last week. I turned down a job because they wanted skin smoothing, as I would say. And they wanted no...
Where it's like porcelain.
Yeah,
no
porcelain.
pores.
And I'm like, I'm really sorry, but I can't do that for you. It's just not... I do that. Yeah, I can recommend you some people, but I won't be able to assist you because that's my name on it as well.
Yeah.
It's not even about the money, but it is my name on it. So every work you do speaks for you, and they will post it everywhere with your credit. So it could hurt you in a way you don't even want to imagine. So it's very important.
Now, you mentioned earlier that a lot of these photographers that hired you way back are still working with you.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, like, with ongoing photographers and these ongoing relationships, there have to be certain critiques that you can give to these photographers to make your job easier, allow them to be able to save money. I mean, things that basically go down to the way the image is shot, certain things about makeup, whatever. How do you communicate such a sensitive thing to photographers?
It's definitely sensitive, especially because it is their baby, and you don't want to like step on their toes and be like, you know what, you suck. You need to do something. I never say that.
This is awful. Are you serious?
It's like, let me shoot for you.
That is not the road to success, people.
No, don't ever do that. So you definitely have to have a personal relationship first.
Yeah.
It can't be off the bat like, hey, listen, you know what, you totally messed this up. You really have to have a personal relationship with the client, and they have to come to you and say, they have to ask you, can you work on this for me? I'm having these issues, especially with skin or with lighting. I'm noticing my lighting is too harsh in the eyes. Can you lighten those up for me? And then I'd be like, I'd be more than happy to do that for you. And also to save you time next time and cost and everything, you could do this if you wanted to.
I see.
And I'd be like, just in case you haven't thought about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes like, oh yeah, I've thought about it. Or they'll be like, oh, actually, I'll try that next time. Thanks for letting me know. And half the time they'll even ask me like, you know, do you ever get a lot of people who give you messy floor pictures? And how can I fix that if my clients are always walking everywhere? And I'll be like, you know, there are a lot of options. Let's talk about it. And I'll tell you all the different options I know about. Because, you know, when I'm working with a photographer, I not only get to see how they light, but also their demeanor and how they set up, how they interact with clients. So I can relay that information in varying information to other clients and say, listen, the industry standard is kind of like this. Maybe this will help you also in case you wanted to know about it. But you definitely have that personal relationship.
That's awesome. And I noticed that you kind of, not only do you wait for that window, they're coming to you, first of all, for help in fixing their images. So you're kind of approaching it in the way that, well, they're asking you to fix something and you're giving them recommendations on this. But you also say this is just kind of food for thought. And you mentioned that this is really just to save you money.
Exactly.
Thing. Like you put it in like, hey, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just saying, here's a way to save money.
Yeah.
And I think that's a much easier approach, especially from a photographer. If I were to hear that, it'd be like, oh, wait, save me money.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Because
he's just trying to save me money.
Because it is just like Photoshop techniques. If let's say you ask somebody, oh, how do you do skin better? And I'll tell them, it's the same thing. Like, oh, you know, you could I could have saved you this much by, doing the makeup this way and so forth. But definitely the key is having that personal relationship, because I want to be friends with them and not just a business client ratio. It has to be a friendship dynamic.
Yeah. I don't know if it would be easier or better. I would think emailing would be my preferred way of communicating. I just feel like on the phone, how many times have you're a photographer too, and we're all photographers. So how many times have you sat down at a computer and you're like, hey friend, come look at this, and you're like showing them and they're like, what is that? Like, is that supposed to be there, or is this? And you're like, yeah, that's part of my vision.
Right.
Please
Don't interrupt my vision, please.
And then they're like, well, I see specks on the face and stuff, and like one of her eyes is closed. That's what I would want it to be. I want it to be
that's
like
artistic. You just don't understand the stuff.
And then like as soon as they leave, you're like, I gotta fix all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I would think like an email might be a little bit easier. You let them accept it on their own.
Right. Yeah. Let them intercept that for a bit.
Yeah. But okay, so I appreciate you talking business with us. We're going to go on in part 3 of this interview. We're going to go into basically the tools that you're using for your trade. So
awesome.
We'll see you guys in part 3.